So I've talked in the past about how my expectations for United are generally pretty low. I'm not Ten Hag's biggest fan. Ineos decided to keep him in. There's a ton of players who still shouldn't be at the squad even after this mass summer exodus of a lot of dead wood in the club. Even with all that being said, I predicted us to finish third with the hope that at least we can maybe turn things around. And so far, in just 1 month of football in both the preseason and in the Premier League, to say that I've been disappointed is definitely an understatement. So in the month of August, which was supposed to be a fantastic month, my birthday month by the way, so you know, a lot of things to look forward to. United played a total of 5 games. One was a preseason game, one of them was a Community Shield, which is pretty much the last preseason game, and then 3 matches in the Premier League. In those 5 matches, we have won just 1 of them. So let's take a look back at August 3rd, where we played against Liverpool in a preseason friendly in the great United States of America. So it's preseason, I'm not gonna harp on this one too much, although this game did see Casemiro get sent packing back to the streets of Brazil, which allowed Liverpool to open the scoring, and it was pretty much smooth sailing for them from here on out, and they would go on to win the game 3-0. 77,000 people got to witness Manchester United getting pummeled on by Liverpool, and of course this is a rare sighting. You definitely wouldn't see this happening again later on, since this is just preseason, right? So again, we didn't want to dwell on preseason too much. There's still some positive things to look forward to. So then that takes us to the Community Shield. Like I said, this is pretty much another preseason game. It does just have a trophy attached to it, so it's a glorified friendly for being honest. Played at Wembley, Premier League champion versus FA Cup champion, a rematch of the FA Cup final, where United against all odds did manage to come out victorious in a very convincing way, which also helped Ten Hag keep his job. So how was he gonna do this time around in a match where there's probably not as much of an expectation for him to win? So maybe it might be a little bit easier, right? Well, this match was pretty lackluster from both teams. You pretty much had both sides shaking off the rust up until halftime. Both teams would make changes and the game would get a little bit more open. We would find the lead at the 82nd minute through Alejandro Garnacho, the same guy who scored in the FA Cup final. However, around this point of the matches where 2 massive things happened for both teams. City brought on Bernardo Silva and Manchester United brought in Jadon Sancho. So Sancho is someone who I've made a video on in the past. His situation with United to be summed up: he was brought into the club maybe a season too late with a lot of hype. He never really performed. He got chances under Ole, Ragnick, and Ten Hag. Ten Hag gave him some time off in one of the seasons for him to go into the mountains, get his head right, and come back to give it his all. Come back he did. He wasn't doing too bad. Ten Hag was giving him a lot of game time, but nothing really ever amassed. Following season, Jadon Sancho had some disciplinary issues, the same issues he's had in the past for other teams. Ten Hag said, you know what, I'm not gonna start you, do a little bit better in training. Sancho goes to cry about it on Twitter, and now Sancho is essentially signed for Chelsea. So this is the same guy that Ten Hag has brought in to try and salvage something in this Community Shield. Well, after this point, United never really looked that convincing, whereas Manchester City did. They would find an equalizer at the 89th minute, taking the match to penalties, where City would go through victorious after Jadon Sancho and Johnny Evans would miss their penalties, sealing the deal for Man City, and they would go on to win the Community Shield. Regardless, for United, this wasn't the most convincing match, but again, it is really a glorified friendly, so we didn't really make too much out of it. But after this, there was a slight positive upturn in news and vibes and the feeling around the club. So after this, there we landed the signing of Mazraoui and De Ligt, 2 of Bayern's main defenders who would come into the side to provide some great defensive stability. We essentially went from defensive coverage in Lindelof and Johnny Evans to now having at least De Ligt, Maguire, and Euro, and Lisandro Martinez, which in the long run are a lot better options. So at this point, we're all feeling positive, despite the fact that we had just lost to Liverpool and also technically City in penalties. Up next, we had Fulham, the first game of the Premier League season. Literally, the whole world's eyes were on United for this match. First Premier League game since May. Manchester United, new owners, Ten Hag at the wheel, new signings in Mazraoui and De Ligt. What was United going to do? Well, all things considered, honestly, this game wasn't too bad from United, but we saw more of the same from this weird Ten Hag structure that he has cooking. I don't even know if I want to call it cooking at this point. Bro is burning the beans, if you know what I'm saying. So in the first half, we did manage to actually control the majority of the game. Outside of the first 15 minutes, United was the most dominant force, had the most possession, we were creating the most chances. It was just the same things as before that were striking us down, our inability to do anything going forward. It's been the same pretty much since Ole left the wheel. Can't score goals, and we're still seeing that to this day. The second half was nowhere near as pretty. Fulham did wake up. They were creating a lot more chances. Maguire had to do some miraculous 2v1 defending to really stop stopped Fulham from scoring. A lot of credit to him there. And at the 87th minute, Joshua Zirkzee, who came off the bench, would get the winning goal for United. So at the end of the day, United got there. We pretty much limped our way across the finish line in this match. It was against Fulham. We were at home. It wasn't the prettiest game, but you know what? First game of the season, we got our win. There's only going up from here, right? Diallo looked very good. Zirkzee got his goal, which made him the third Dutch Manchester United striker to get a debut goal against Fulham. But of course, there are negatives, right? I mean, we didn't look the most convincing. Our attack wasn't great. We were getting countered on a ton in the second half. Our midfield was super open as it was last season. So there's definitely still room to improve, but we got the win. So that's what mattered the most. So going into our next game against a Brighton team that realistically we should be beating, but credit to Brighton, they're still a very good side. Well, in an embarrassing turn of events, Danny Welbeck would get an opening goal at the 32nd minute. Harry Maguire, who had a very good game against Fulham, for whatever reason decided to let a ball go straight past him. So Harry Maguire, falling asleep, led us to being down 1-0 at halftime, which left us clawing away at the game as we had been doing so many times in last season. Up steps Amad Diallo at the 60th minute, who up to that point hadn't been having the best game. He finally realized he has the ability to shoot, and he is probably one of the best footballers on the pitch for Manchester United. He ends up putting United back into the game at the 60th minute. So from here, United had the chance to push on and really show, you know what, maybe we haven't been doing the best this game, but we're about to make up for it. Let us cook. We're about to go crazy. And of course, we fall asleep at the back, and João Pedro scores at the 95th minute.
Allah, I want to kill myself, bro.
To win Brighton the game at the death of the match. At this point, I'm numb to it. My friends make fun of me, but I don't care. I'm still gonna support the club. I'm numb to it, okay? We can only go up, right? We're here. We just lost to Brighton. This is the third game out of 4 in the last month that we haven't won. You know what I'm saying here? We've only scored 2 goals in 4 games. This is pathetic. But you know what? High hopes. Regardless of this loss, right? It wasn't pretty. We lost the match. The whole world is making fun of us as they usually do. But you know what? We have the chance in our final match of the season to make amends for this. We play against Liverpool, our biggest rival, our most bitter rival. Last season, they weren't able to beat us at all. We were actually in a very similar scenario to a couple of seasons ago. We're going into our 3rd game of the season after winning our 1st game and losing our 2nd game to Brighton. And that season, we were able to beat Liverpool at home. So what did we have in store for this game? Well, all I can say is I hope Casemiro has learned Arabic at this point, because he's got to go. In the most embarrassing game of the season so far, United got absolutely clapped up by Liverpool 3-0 in a match that realistically could have probably ended up being 5, 6, or 7. But the most frustrating part about this game is the fact that the 3 goals were all pretty much caused by individual mistakes, 2 of which were from Casemiro. They literally scored the same goal within like a 10-minute span because Casemiro just gave the ball away, and it was the same goal scored twice. It was the same goal. Granted, even regardless, without those mistakes, we played terrible. So in 1 month of football, 1 month, United played 5 games, we scored 2 goals, and we won just 1 match. Just before the Liverpool match, right, we did end up securing the signature of Manuel Ugarte to replace Casemiro, who honestly we could have probably really used Ugarte in that match, but even him, he's not necessarily the player that we would need. I don't really know how much he's gonna really be able to fix. He probably would have been better in that position than Casemiro, who at this point just looks like he's completely out of it. Respect to him for everything that he's won, but it's not really looking good for Casemiro's future at this point in time. So where does this leave United for the next month of football? After the international break, most of our games aren't the most difficult in the world. The biggest game that might trip us up is that Crystal Palace match, which we tend to just crumble up when we play against them for whatever reason. But realistically, if we can get Ugarte in there and just kind of brush these 2 losses off, we could probably still turn the season around. It's only been 3 games, at least in the actual Premier League, so I don't want to be too hyperbolic and say that the season's over. Not the biggest fan of Ten Hag, not the biggest fan of the way that we're playing, but we can probably still salvage it. But what am I kidding? Always give myself this hope, and it never pans out. Because at the end of the day, with the bald man still at the helm, there's only so high that we can really go.